In this video, we're going to discuss graphing radical functions using question number 25 from the June 2014 Regent. Draw the graph of y is equal to the square root of x minus 1 on the set of axes below. There are two ways we could do this. We need to make a table of our x values and their corresponding y values. Either we could do this by hand or we could do it using the calculator. We'll do it both ways. First we'll do it by hand, then we'll do it using the calculator. So we have the square root of x minus 1 is equal to y. We need to pick values for x to plug in to find the corresponding y values. For this question, we have the square root of x, and x is the only thing in the radical. Since in the radical we can never have a negative, the smallest number we're going to be able to plug in for x will be 0. If we had the square root of x plus 4, we would be able to plug in negative numbers. We would be able to plug in, let's say, negative 1. Because negative 1 plus 4 is positive 3. So whatever's inside the radical is still positive. And let's say we had the cube root of something, the cube root of, let's say, negative 8. We're allowed to have the cube root of a negative number because what a square root means, it means that it's one number times itself. A cube root means that it's one number times itself again, and we will be able to get a negative number. We can never have two numbers being multiplied by each other that are negative, that will give us a negative number, but we can have three numbers being multiplied by each other that will give us a negative number. So back to this question, when we plug in x is equal to 0, we have the square root of 0 minus 1. The square root of 0 is just 0. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And let's move on. Let's plug in 1. The square root of 1 minus 1. The square root of 1 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Next value for x, we'll plug in x is equal to 2. Then we'll have the square root of 2. Notice you could try it on your calculator. The square root of 2 will give you an irrational number. And that would be very hard for you to graph. You could graph 1.4, about 1.4, but it would be easier if you would just skip to the next perfect square, which is 4. And you'll have enough numbers to enough points to plug in if you do it like this. So now the 4 is a perfect square. The square root of 4 minus 1. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Next, we're skipping 5. We're skipping 6. We're skipping 7. Skipping 8. And up to 9. Square root of 9 is 3. Minus 1 is 2. And then 10, 11, 12. Since our graph only goes out till x is equal to 10, anything past 9 we won't be able to graph. So let's just graph the points that we have. 0, comma, negative 1 is over here. 1, comma, 0 is over here. 4, comma, 1 is over here. And 9, comma, 2 is over here. Now we're going to connect these points. And we're going to put an arrow on this end because the graph keeps on going out like that. But we are not going to put an arrow over here. That would be wrong because the graph does not go past there. We can't plug in any negative. The graph will never look like that because we cannot plug in any negative x value. So this end stays how it is, just a dot. And the other end gets an arrow because we could plug in other x values where they're just not on our graph here. Let's say you didn't want to make that table and do all the work by hand in your head. It wasn't such a hard one, but let's say you didn't want to do it. Let's say you had a harder question. What you could do is you could go to your calculator and graph it. Square root of x and then minus 1. And zoom 6, zoom standard to graph it. Here you see the graph that we drew. Now let's say we didn't draw it before. You would see this graph without knowing what the graph would look like beforehand. How does this help you if you can't see exact points? You could go press the second button and press graph. When you press the second button, you notice it's blue when it's not clicked. You're really activating the little blue words on top of each button. So if you press graph, you're in the table. And then you'll scroll down and you'll see that we have an error message for all of the negative numbers because we can never have a negative x. But when we get to 0, when to x is equal to 0, we have a point. So you can make your table and just copy it from the calculator. 0, negative 1. Next. 1, 0. Next. We're not going to use 2 because it's irrational. We're not going to use 3. But 4 gives us a good number. So 4 and 1. Let's keep on going. We're not going to use 5, not going to use 6, not going to use 7, not going to use 8. 9 gives a good number. And then 10 we won't be able to use because it's irrational. And past that we can't use because it's not on our graph. So without having to actually plug in values like we did before, you could just use your calculator to give you the table.